Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies, and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of these and more will be front and center. You can watch this program on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. That's Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And this program, Front and Center, can also be heard on the following shortwave frequencies. That's 9.475 megahertz, 15.640 megahertz, and 17.820 megahertz. Join us for another edition of Front and Center with your host, Jerome Toledo. For topic today, the Republic Act number 11954, which was enacted or as known as an act establishing Maharlika Investment Fund, was enacted on July 18, 2023, that aims to unlock the country's growth potential by stimulating the economy through its big-ticket infrastructure such as green and blue projects, countryside development, other employment-generating projects, and other emerging megatrends, for example, environment, social, and governance, as well as digitalization and healthcare. Specifically included are public road networks, tollways, railways, green energy, water, agro-industrial ventures, and telecommunications. And these critical areas offer better rates of return and greater socio-economic impact. And meanwhile, or recently, the Maharlika Investment Corporation, or MIC, the country's first sovereign wealth fund, is set to invest 19.7 billion Philippine peso to acquire a 20% stake in the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, marking a significant step toward increasing government influence over the country's power grid operations. So this comes after stake acquisition agreement was signed by the MIC President and Chief Executive Officer Rafael Consing Jr. and Synergy Grid and Development Philippines Incorporated Chairman Henry C. Jr. So that's a MIC fund will be used to purchase preferred shares at 5 or 15 pesos each from SGP, which is a key stakeholder in NGCP. And the state-owned wealth fund eyes to finalize and sign the transaction documents of its maiden investment within the next 90 days. So what is the importance of this investment to our Filipino people? And what can we expect more from the MIC this year? So we have now the guest for our show is Mr. Rafael Consing, the President and CEO of Maharlika Investment Corporation. Thank you, Mr. Consing, for joining us in the program.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for inviting me. And good morning to everyone.
Okay, and the pleasure is ours. So let me begin this question. So for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, Mr. Consing, especially to our Filipinos living and working abroad. So how important is this move or this acquisition, or should I call it an investment for the Filipino people?
I would say extremely important. At the onset of when Maharlika was established, we made known our strategy early in the process that during its nascent stage, we were going to be steering the Sovereign Wealth Fund or the Maharlika Investment Fund as a national development fund. That means that we will be investing the capital in the Philippines. And the reason for that is, whilst there are significant opportunities abroad, the opportunities in the Philippines are just as vast, A, and B, it will be significantly more impactful when it comes to the impact to our fellow Filipinos. So, and top of this list of sectors that we've chosen to invest is basically in energy security. When we choose an investment, there are basically two things in our mind. Number one, we looked at the what the ambition to 2040 basically aims to achieve. And we then worked back and we looked at basically what the different sectors that we can invest in that could be in support of this vision. And we've decided that energy security it sits on top of it. Connectivity, that would be physical and digital connectivity, being an equally important sector. Third would be resource extraction and processing. Fourth is food security. Investments around the themes of food security is going to be extremely important. Now, going back to energy security, once we've chosen these sectors, we then ask ourselves which part of that ecosystem within the sector requires the most amount of investment. And we felt that it so far as the energy sector is concerned, it would be in the lines, in the rolling out of lines to ensure that we are building the energy infrastructure required, well, to support economic growth in the Philippines for generations to come.
Oh, I see. Okay. Do you see any potential? So that's why you invested. The MIC invested first in the power sector.
Absolutely. The country continues to grow. Obviously, the demand for electricity will rise, and you have very strong participants or players in the private sector who can, in fact, meet the demands of bringing supply into the system. Key to that, however, is the successful rollout of the infrastructure, of the grid infrastructure. Because otherwise, even if you build the plant, but if you can't connect it to the grid, then the plant becomes stranded, meaning it's there, it can deliver capacity, but it's not able to deliver that particular capacity to the grid in order for everyone for it to be used. So that's what we are hopefully aiming for by by supporting NGCP in its capital expansion and its capital expenditure rollout, and we hope to be able to achieve hopefully the government's vision of 100% electrification.
I see. And going back, Mr. Consing, so recently the MIC has signed an agreement, or I think, with the SGP, which is the Synergy Grid of the Philippines. Basically, that's a MIC. What MIC did is to purchase two board seats on the NGCP. So, how important is this move for our Filipino people, especially Filipinos who are consuming electricity?
Quite important. Following this investment, the Philippines will have representation in the board. Currently, that board is 40% controlled by State Grid of China, and 60% in turn is controlled by the Filipino investors. So we're coming in for 20% of the holding company that in turn controls 40% of NGCP. So as a result of such investment rather, we would have representations equal to two board seats each at SGP and also the subsidiary NGCP. The reason for why that is important is we will now be able to actively participate in ensuring that the rollout is indeed consistent and aligned with national interest. We want to ensure ensure basically that all the well, we can raise the transparency basically insofar as the operations of NSCP, and bring that information basically to the public, particularly because no one is really articulating that today. So today, what happens is we consume electricity. It is an important concession. All we hear basically are, unfortunately, adverse news on NGCP, and we wanted to find out for ourselves, basically, but at the same time, be able to achieve or participate also in the profitability of that company.
I see. And besides purchasing two board seats. Is there any plan to purchase more board seats so that is there a plan for MIC to actually take over the NGCP?
No, no, that's certainly not part of the plan.
Okay.
In fact, to my mind, in my opinion, this should remain basically in the hands of the private sector, provided that it's got the right the technical support and management support. It should remain with the private sector.
I see. Besides NGCP, Mr. Consing, is there any plans to invest in other power-related companies or institutions?
Yes, certainly. One of the other agreements that we've signed, or under MOUs rather that we've signed, which has not achieved the same level of publicity, obviously, as the agreement that we've signed with NGCP, is our agreement with Mindoro. Okay, so in 2009, talking about energy security still, no, in 2009, when the electricity market was liberalized, they bifurcated the market into those which are connected to the transmission grid, and that in turn is managed by NGCP when the transmission grid, the concession for running transmission grid was privatized. And then you have another pool of utilities called SPUGs, which stands for Small Power Utility Groups. That's roughly about 34 utilities across the nation out of about 134. And these are the ones that are not connected to the grid.
I see.
Today, they pay roughly about two times what we pay in Metro Manila, for example. Because the likes of Metro Manila and those who are connected to the grid are able to enjoy lower electricity prices compared to those not connected to the grid, because they can benefit from the pool of energy sources that go into the grid. It's renewables, there's coal, there's just geothermal, and so on and so forth. In the provinces, where they are not, which are not connected to the grid, they largely obtain their power sources from coal, but pardon me, from diesel, from oil, and bunker fuel, and it's extremely expensive. And today, many of these areas are in fact paying for the true cost of power because the demand is significantly greater than the capacity that NPC is able to provide.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
Mr. Cons-
what we're doing therefore is we're also investing in these. We aim to invest in the SPUG areas as well to ensure that much like what we'd like to do with the national grid, they also get connected.
Okay. All right. I would like to ask this, Mr. Consing. So, how about investing in, for example, Bataan nuclear power plant, as well as other renewable energy projects? So, how open the MIC is in investing in these areas?
Okay. Under the same law, or under the same EPIRA law, there is a restriction on cross ownership. Meaning, if we invest in the grid, which we are practically going, in about 90 days, we would have signed the agreement and we would be making that investment. We will be restricted from owning either a distribution or generation company whose assets are connected to the grid. So we're not going to be allowed to operate these assets. And it's also to ensure neutrality. Okay.
Okay.
That said, we can do the same. That said, in the SPUG areas, we can do Genco, we can invest in distribution, apart from rolling out transmission. Okay. That's why I had to bifurcate the two. I had to explain, because there is greater need for capital in respect of SPUGs, and therefore they did not restrict, or they did not impose these cross ownership restrictions in these areas. And the answer is yes, we will be looking at investing in other sectors within the entire electricity value chain, but it has to be in the SPUG areas.
Okay. In
Anything
short,
that's got to do with the grid, in the main grid, we stay with the grid.
Okay. In short, Mr. Consing, before I switch to another topic. So, in short, MIC will first invest in transmission lines or projects, correct?
Infrastructure highways.
Infrastructure
So
highways.
yeah, so we're talking about this time, we're talking about electricity infrastructure,
Okay, I
right?
see.
The next vision is we would want to build a broadband and telecommunications infrastructure.
I see. Okay. So
Yeah.
moving on to another or another topic, Mr. Consing. So I would like to ask how open the MIC is to invest in projects related to defense in support of the administration's plan for self-reliance defense posture of the Philippines.
We are happy to look at the correct projects as long as these are not direct weapons. So, for example, if we're talking about investments in marine assets, like for example, boats which have multi-purpose use, which can be converted eventually for defense and also for civil use, civilian use rather, or civil defense use, we will be happy to support those, but certainly not when it comes to the actual weapons themselves.
Okay, so it's like arms trade. Is that correct,
No,
Mr.
no,
Consing?
no. Yeah, we don't see
Okay.
ourselves.
Just for
That's part of our negative list.
okay.
So,
So it's
so weapons,
go ahead.
tobaccos are the ones that weapons and tobaccos. We will not be investing in those.
Okay. All right. So just for a recall, Mr. Consing, you mentioned a few minutes ago about investing in broadband and telecommunications institutions or corporations. So, how soon MIC will invest in these industries?
That's a good question. So at the moment, we are speaking with the ICT. We're basically aligning our plans with them. You know, if you look at telecoms infrastructure specifically, we are speaking of telecommunication towers. And we very well know that when the law on the common towers was passed, um, you basically had the entry of very large foreign investors in that space coming in over the past 24, 36 months. The reality, however, is they are heavily concentrated in urban areas. Okay. If you look at the Philippines, theoretically, if you want to connect the whole country, and if you were just to simplify it by putting in one telecom tower per barangay, then we should have about 40,000 towers. Okay. Today we have about, but if you look at the lay of the land, the way our population is scattered, the country needs about 70 to 75,000 telecommunications towers. Today, there are about 36, 37 towers, 37,000 towers, except that they are located mostly in urban areas.
Right.
So what we want to be able to do is invest in what they call GIDA areas. That stands for geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. Interestingly, the SPUG areas and the GIDA areas have so many touch points. So if you overlay that map between the GIDA areas in power and the SPUG areas in relation to power and GIDA areas when it comes to broadband, they have commonalities. No? So let me give you an idea. Boracay and Palawan, very strong tourist attraction, but they're both GIDAs and SPUGs. So we want to be able to roll out infrastructure projects in those areas in order to catalyze and enable capital formation wholesale.
I see.
And I think that's a very important differentiation in our strategy compared to other sovereign wealth funds across the globe.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Consing, so I would like to ask this question since we're talking about the Maharlika Investment Corporation itself. So, can you share us of the investment plans of the MIC for this year and beyond?
Sure. So we're putting together our corporate strategy for the next 5 years. And then we've set basically those KPIs, which the board will be approving. But just to give you a flavor of what that will be, so we are aiming for this year the four significant investments. I
Mm-hmm.
envision that to be in the following sectors. I've got energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned potentially, hopefully, we can start broadband and connectivity and telecoms infrastructure. Third would be resource extraction and processing. That's basically mining processing.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth is we're also looking at the healthcare market. On the side, there are smaller investments that we're aiming for, but we're still studying them. That would be in the area of climate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The country basically is blessed with vast resources, not potentials for carbon credits, and we're basically looking at what is the best strategy to be able to enable that market and create value
Mm-hmm.
from that. So we're studying that at the moment. And we're also looking at transportation infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
and tourism infrastructure projects. But we have not, again, what we want to be able to do is really hone in exactly which part of that sector requires the most amount of investment that can catalyze its growth.
I see.
And for these sectors, we have yet to find basically that particular company or sector.
Okay. Mr. Consing, I would like to ask this. I know this is not a normally asked question. So, would the MIC be an aggressive investor or a conservative investor?
So, if you read by the way, our investment and risk management framework is uploaded in our website.
Mm.
So we've got a website, mic.gov.ph.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see here that we've stated that our risk appetite is moderate. We're taking moderate risk.
Mm.
Instead of weighing ourselves as aggressive or conservative, what we've decided is to take a more moderate risks, or
In the
in
middle, right?
we are would slightly a little bit slightly more aggressive than middle, or
Mm.
in we can, for example, enter into early PE stages, early private equity stages. So if you look at the stages in which an investor can come in a company, you either start as a venture capital or a private equity investor. So those are two different disciplines. If you look at sovereign wealth funds across the globe, typically they would take late stage private equity
Mm.
investments because it's more stable, the business model had already been proven, and so on and so forth. So in our case, we take a little bit more moderate, uh, or slightly more aggressive than that, uh,
Mm.
by taking early private equity risk, and we basically hedge ourselves through long-term contracts.
Mm.
Right. So it allows you therefore to enter into slightly more aggressive risks, but you can mitigate that by long-term contracts, like what I said earlier.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. I would like to go to another issue, Mr. Consing. So I understand that the initial capital of the MIC came from various state-owned sources, such as Land Bank of the Philippines and Development Bank of the Philippines, as well as Government Service Insurance System, among others. So my question is that once MIC has gained earnings through its investment, although it's too early to say, would it be open to return the money to these institutions of the money, and then the remaining proceeds of the earnings will be used as a capital for its next investment for the interest of the Filipinos?
The funding, the MIC was seeded coming from four sources. At the moment, it's coming from Land Bank and DBP. So GSIS or SSS or
Mm-mm.
any of the other agencies have no part in MIC today.
Okay.
So you only have Land Bank and DBP contributing 50 billion and 25 billion pesos respectively.
Mm-hmm.
The balance of the 50 billion, because our capitalization is meant to be at 125 billion, the balance of 50 will be coming partially from dividends that are due to the government coming from the BSP
Mm-hmm.
and also coming from the Philippine Amusement Gaming Corporation or PAGCOR. So this has not been delivered to us yet. Neither have we requested for it. So we're
Mm.
currently deploying the 75 billion first.
Okay.
Now, the policy of government is once you generate profits, we're supposed to pay out 50% of the distributable net income or retained earnings back to
Mm-hmm.
government. So hence next year, whatever money that we can generate as an income, then we can certainly pay that out as part of our dividends, the dividend commitments. That goes to the U.S. Treasury, pardon me, to the Philippine Treasury, and not to Land Bank or DBP.
Oh, okay. So it will
Goes
be
directly to the Philippine Treasury. Yeah,
okay. So the proceeds of the earnings will go straight to
to the
our
budget,
treasury, national treasury.
to the budget. Yes,
With the budget.
to the
Okay.
budget.
Okay,
Correct.
got it. Okay, Mr. Consing, I would like to ask this. So, is there a physical office of the MIC that that potential clientele or clients can go to, and how many staff does this state-owned wealth fund have right now? So, does it have enough manpower as well to operate this agency?
Yes, so our offices are in BGC. Today we have a staff of about 28 people. We only received our approval to hire latter part of July. So when we came in January 3 of this year, which is our very first board meeting, we basically had the law behind us. So that was about building writing the frameworks, writing the charters, building the organization,
Mm-hmm.
getting this approved by the GCG, et cetera, et cetera. Basically navigating bureaucracy. And we received our approval to hire manpower in, call that latter part of July and early August. So we started recruitment, and we still are basically building that team. And we aim to achieve about 43 personnel in the next 30 to 60 days. At the moment, we're
Mm-hmm.
about 28, so we've got more people joining us well, hopefully in the next quarter. So it's not easy to hire people.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's not just any ordinary stuff. So we basically, particularly when it comes to the investment group, we're hiring the best
Mm-hmm.
that the country can be proud of.
Ah, okay. So, meaning to say the MIC staff is some sort of a veteran or experienced in their
Highly
respective
technical.
fields.
The proper term is highly technical.
Highly technical.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay, got it. Okay, so before we end the discussion for today, Mr. Consing, so I would like to ask for your message to the Filipinos watching these developments at the MIC. So yeah, the floor is yours to give a message to the Filipinos, Mr. Consing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity again to address your viewers. I think it's really important for us to be able to emphasize that the acquisition or the eventual acquisition of 20% of SGP, which in turn has 40% ownership in NGCP,
Mm-hmm.
is actually a win for the Filipinos. It's an extremely important achievement. Um, if we're able to execute and close this in the next 90 to 180 days.
Mm-hmm.
The projects that we are executing are going to be all impactful. It will when we look at projects, we have a twin mandate basically of profitability and social impact, and we have got two separate measures for these, and we're focused on achieving these.
Okay. All right. And with that, thank you very much, Mr. Rafael Consing, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Marlica Investment Corporation, for joining us in the program. It was a very valuable discussion regarding this acquisition of the two board seats at the NGCP, at the same time explaining the in and outs of the MIC itself. So thank you, Mr. Rafael Consing.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And you just heard and watched the interview of the program with the President and CEO of the Maharlika Investment Corporation, Mr. Rafael Consing. Together with our production team here at Radyo Pilipinas World Service, together with Erwin Peñano and Milo Junela and Hiro Lucero, this is your host, Jerome Toledo, saying, Mabuhay and love the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.